I gotta be honest, I've never really been on board with the whole PC soundbar thing. We've seen a few of them built specifically for desktop use, like the LG GP9, but I've always liked the wider side of a pair of stereo speakers like my Audio Engine A2 Plus, or just a nice pair of gaming headphones. The main reason why is that soundbars just need a lot of space. When you're sitting within a foot or two of one, the stereo image gets much narrower and they sound harsh because you're getting a lot of that, weird high-end mouth noise that's supposed to project out and dissipate throughout the room, and it's right next to your ears. So it's easy to see why I was skeptical about the updated Razer Leviathan V2 Pro. But that's the thing. This is far from just an ordinary soundbar. Leveraging an IR camera to perform beamforming and achieving plausible virtual surround sound, the Leviathan V2 Pro sounds much bigger than it has any right to. And turning off the surround sound using it to listen to music or watch YouTube videos is surprisingly enjoyable. There's no doubt that this is a top-tier audio experience for your desktop. My main problem with it is that it feels like an experience. There are these amazing glimpses of the beamforming at work in blockbuster action games, but for day-to-day use, there are other options that sound just as good and are a whole lot cheaper. But before getting into the rest of the video, make sure to leave a thumbs up below and get subscribed so you don't miss any new videos from Digital Trends. Alright, so in the box you get the soundbar itself and an external subwoofer. Now this is a 5-inch downfiring subwoofer. Sure, that's not going to give you the room-shaking low end of a larger 8 or 10-inch home theater sub, but it's not one of these dinky 2 to 3-inch subs you find on a speaker set like the Logitech G560. You get a lot of thump here, and Razer did a good job of tuning the crossover between the soundbar and the sub so they don't feel like two separate entities. You're getting one big cohesive sound. In the soundbar, you have 5 2-inch drivers. That's not the full 7 like Razer advertises, but that's because the extra speakers are virtual. Still, it's nice to see such a high driver count for that positional accuracy, even if you're not getting the massive driver array available on some high-end Dolby Atmos soundbars. Everything else is just trickery, but it's really good trickery, and that's all thanks to beamforming. In short, how it works is that there's a camera on the Leviathan V2 Pro. That captures your head and ears and tracks them throughout the room. Those images are then fed into an AI processor, which can create a virtual surround sound speaker array and control the volume and positioning of sounds based on where your head is. Sure, that might sound like nonsense, but when it works really well. I booted up The Last of Us Part 1 on PC and went through the opening segment of that game, and it was easily the best way I've ever played it. Hearing cars whizzing by, a building crumbling over my shoulder, it really does create an audio environment where you feel like the sound is wrapping all the way around you. Now, it's not a multi-$1,000 home theater system, but it was never trying to be. This is an emulation, and frankly, a really good one at that. But I need to get back to the whole when it works part because it doesn't always work. Surprisingly, the head tracking always worked, at least when I was testing. Bright room, dark room, night, day, it didn't matter. The camera always picked up where I was at. I know that too because there's an indicator on the front that lights up when the camera isn't tracking you. Very handy. No, this is a problem with how games are mixed for PC. Most PC games don't have a 7.1 surround sound mix, and among those that do, they're mixed for dedicated speakers or headphones, not faux surround sound from a soundbar. That leads to some really strange situations. In Returnal, for example, there's this underlying pad of ambience that carries throughout the game, and it drowned out everything to the point where I could barely hear my gun firing. There's an EQ you can access through Razer Synapse to tune the sound, but it can't account for these imbalances that are present in some mixes. I'd say in probably about half the games I played, I ended up turning off the virtual surround sound because it just sounded wrong. And that's a bummer because it really has nothing to do with the Leviathan V2 Pro. It's just that audio in most games isn't designed for a speaker like this. The good news is that Razer has some ways to mitigate the problem. Now I focus on the virtual surround sound, but there are actually 4 sound modes available on the Leviathan V2 Pro. In addition to virtual surround sound, you have standard stereo sound, a room fill setting that widens the stereo field for listening to music with friends or whatever, and a really interesting setting called virtual headphones. You can toggle between these through Razer Synapse or through a dedicated button on the soundbar. Again, super handy to have that button given how often you need to switch between audio modes. The virtual headset mode is what saves the Leviathan V2 Pro. It does basically what the virtual surround sound does, tracking your head, positioning audio and all that, but instead of a 7.1 speaker array, it emulates headphones. It's shocking how close it brings the sound to your ears, and yeah, it kind of sounds like you're using headphones. I constantly fell back on using the virtual headset mode in games where the virtual surround sound just didn't sound right. Destiny 2, Resident Evil 4 Remake, Returnal, the list goes on. Most games are mixed for a stereo pair of headphones, and it shows. You still get positioning of, bullets and footsteps and whatnot, but it's in the context of two speakers and a balance in a way that the developer originally intended. That's a really good rule of thumb to follow for the Leviathan V2 Pro. Razer points it out in Synapse, but if you're playing or watching something with a 7.1 surround sound mix, the virtual surround sound is great. But if you're playing something stereo, stick with the virtual headphones. And again, toggling between them is a matter of pressing a button on top of the soundbar, so really no issues going back and forth. Okay, but let's move beyond gaming. It shouldn't come as a surprise, but movies are really the best showcase for the soundbar if you have a stream with a 7.1 surround sound mix. It's a bit muffled like you get in the theater with that bombastic low end and really solid dynamic range considering how small the soundbar is. My only gripe is balance, with dialogue sometimes fading into the background. You can EQ the soundbar to get a better spot depending on what you're watching, but I was always on the edge of having the dialogue become too harsh or lost to the massive low end. Music, on the other end, is great in stereo mode, no EQ required. I really like the room fill function too. I was able to step around my office, which is pretty large, and not get any drop off in the high end that you typically hear when you're not directly in front of the speaker. I actually stepped out in my hallway around the corner from the soundbar and it still sounded crisp on the room fill setting, which was super impressive. Even better, you can connect the soundbar with Bluetooth, so it's a great option if you have some friends over and you want to listen to some music. Again, the EQ can kind of be a problem here. I didn't need to EQ, but when I tried to tweak the sound a bit, it kind of fell apart. The sound is very balanced out of the box, so adding a little top end immediately went into harsh territory, while adding some low end became overwhelming. For most of my time, I actually left the EQ flat and just adjusted the subwoofer volume, which Razer thankfully includes a setting for in Synapse. If you want to EQ, you can tweak it in Synapse and save a custom curve, but Razer includes several presets as well. What's great is that these are built into the soundbar with a dedicated button, so you can toggle between them. Just like the surround sound setting, the lights on the front tell you which profile you're on, and if you have Synapse open, you can see a pop-up with the setting you just changed to. In addition to the EQ and surround buttons, you also get a chunky metal volume wheel, an input button, and a chroma mode button. Of course, this is a Razer product, so you can sync it up with all of your other Razer peripherals with the RGB light strip on bottom. It actually works with Wallpaper Engine as well, which was a pleasant surprise seeing the soundbar automatically match the wallpaper on my desktop. Really cool stuff. Okay, so the Leviathan V2 Pro is very impressive, and although the $400 price tag seemed a bit high at first glance, it's totally justified given how great the soundbar really is. I think the rub here is that there are a lot of other great PC speakers that are just a lot cheaper. I already mentioned the Audio Engine A2 Pluses, which are about $270. And if you're on a budget, there are speakers like this SteelSeries Arena 3, even if those don't come with a subwoofer. Of course, neither of those provide the beamforming AI tracking that the Leviathan V2 Pro does, but they're a good illustration of how much that tech really costs. And there's the fact that a lot of gaming happens with headphones. The Leviathan V2 Pro wants to be your main audio source, and it does that job really well. But if you primarily find yourself playing games with headphones or chatting on Discord with friends, the Leviathan V2 Pro becomes a lot less practical. I want to get those points in, but there's no mistaking that the Leviathan V2 Pro succeeds on what it sets out to do, and with flying colors. The AI head tracking is useful and impressive, and the sound quality is truly worth the price Razer is asking. It's true that a desktop soundbar isn't for everyone, but if the Leviathan V2 Pro sounds like an answer to your desktop audio, you'll be very happy if you pick one up. But I want to know what you think. Are you going to pick up the Leviathan V2 Pro? Do you have dedicated speakers for gaming, or are you more into headphones? Let me know in the comments below. While you're down there, make sure to get subscribed and leave a like on this video. All right, thanks for watching everyone. I will see you in the next one.